Hey, all, welcome back to a Monday, August 26th, 2024 edition here on the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. We got a fun show for you guys today. Week 0 reactions, Georgia Tech beating Florida State 24-21 in Dublin. We talk about our final college football playoff projections, our awards ballot. We talk about who we have winning the national title, who gets to host, who wins the conference, who's the Heisman, what we think the game of the year will end up being. Matt Green also, he had an interesting Tennessee game of the year here on this very program, and we differed on which games I think will actually be the most memorable and most fun here for not just Tennessee fans, but for college football fans as a whole. But we dive into all of it here on our final college football prediction show, along with our Week 0 reactions before we get into our Week 1 preview later in the week and all that good stuff. But the college football season is here. Tennessee, Chattanooga on Saturday, Georgia, Clemson on Saturday, same time. Don't love that, but that's just the way it is for this weekend. Miami, Florida, Texas A&M, Notre Dame, a lot of good stuff here Week 1. So can't complain too much. LSU, USC, but all kinds of great stuff here. College football is officially back, folks. So good friend of Penn University of North Georgia, alumni Matt Green, here to do it again here this season, talking all things college football on our Tennessee Volunteers podcast. Don't forget, folks, before we dive into today's episode, a little bit of housekeeping. You can watch this show on YouTube, youtube.com/ChaseThomasPodcast. Like and subscribe if you have not already done so. Well over 2,000 subs here, and we're growing more and more each and every day here on this podcast. Make sure you're liked and subscribed. Comment below if you like this very show and like this episode and want to get involved. It's easy to do so on our video channel over there on YouTube. You can also listen to this show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or however you get your podcast if you prefer to go the audio route. That is also readily available. But if you are listening via Apple Podcasts or Spotify and you have not already done so, please hit that pause button right now and leave this show a 5-star rating and write us a review. It helps other people find the show, and it helps this very show continue to grow. You can get in touch with us at chasethomaspodcast@gmail.com and check out the website for all the information about the show, past episodes, information about this Tennessee Volunteers podcast, the number one Knoxville, Tennessee Vols podcast. Everywhere we talk college football, college basketball as well, with the Tennessee slant and Georgia slant a little bit here with a pod divided with Matt Green each and every week, twice a week during the college football season beginning this week. So all that good stuff here on the program, chasethomaspodcast.com. All right, Uncle Darren, let's go.
The Chase Thomas Podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, we're back here on the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. Joining me down there in Decatur, Georgia, my good friend, fellow University of North Georgia alumni, Matt Green. Matt, good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, sir. Foosball is back. I'm psyched, man.
It was a good time. I'm glad. Because as we talked about last week, a year ago, it was over very quickly in Dublin with Navy and Notre Dame, and we were not treated to really much of a fun debut welcome back college football game a season ago. But this time it was a rush, not a lot of possessions, killing a lot of clock, some old school football, no turnovers. We'll get into Week 0 and what happened between the Jackets and the Florida State Seminoles. Unfortunately, my cousin Sam over there in Dublin for the game and wasn't able to see his team. But hey, he gets this experience there. I think they're going to do some other sightseeing and stuff. So it's still going to be a good trip overall. But I'm
sure the trip's not ruined at all. It's all fine. Everything's fine. No big deal.
Fine.
We'll still have a great time. Yeah, everything's fine.
Whew. But not exactly how you want to start 2024 if you're the Florida State Seminoles coming off the Georgia blowout 66-3 Orange Bowl performance last year. So back-to-back rough
State of Georgia
endings.
has Florida State's number.
They do. But Matt Green, we're going to do our college football prediction show here ahead of Week 1 officially getting underway this week, and also we'll have our preview show on Wednesday night outlining week 1. So we'll be back in our pick'em and all of that good stuff and our recap on Sunday night. Tennessee, Chattanooga, Georgia, Clemson, both at noon, which I don't love, but that should not be a nooner. I don't know who's responsible for Georgia, Clemson being at noon, but that is a travesty. That should be a night game.
I said that at first, but I've changed my tune, honestly. I think now that ESPN has all the SEC inventory, I think they know how valuable that spot is, because a lot of people are watching College Game Day, and you go College Game Day straight into football.
Yeah.
You used to have that sleeper Big Ten game. It'd be like Illinois versus Michigan State or something,
Juice Williams
it would just take the whole vibe down, just some random Northwestern Indiana game. But now that ESPN, that noon slot, I feel like is a big time slot. And so you just have, everyone's ready for college football to start after watching Game Day, and then boom, Georgia Clemson. Like, that's the game of the weekend that everyone's going to be. It's like the first, just like Florida State, Georgia Tech this weekend. It's like, that's the first game that everyone in the country was watching. Georgia Clemson will kind of be the same on the first Saturday. Like that first noon game, like as soon as you're watching Game Day, everyone's going to keep tuned in for Clemson, Georgia.
Absolutely. And it was kind of nice, all of college football, media, fans, all that, to be watching one game together. Like, it was a nice thing. Because that won't be the case for the rest of the season. People will be watching different stuff, and there are going to be a lot of big time games on all the time, and we're going to have to pick and choose how we go about it. My attention will be divided, obviously at noon, with Tennessee, Chattanooga, and Georgia, Clemson. But good slate.
You're watching UT Chattanooga over Georgia Clemson?
Yeah, for sure. It's a Nico debut.
Get out of here. You need to see like one quarter of that. You can watch that on delay, honestly.
No, I got to watch every snap. I have to watch every snap. I have to take my notes. I have to see who's playing. I have to see the rotations, any injuries.
I hope I hope for your sake you got another TV set up so you can watch some real football, not this this glorified scrimmage that's going to be happening in Knoxville.
No respect for the Mocs here, Matt Green. But week 0, speaking of week 0, before we get into those predictions, Georgia Tech 24, Florida State 21, Matt Green, your biggest takeaway from the Yellow Jackets continuing on. Brent Key undefeated against ranked ACC teams here now, 5-0 since taking over in 2022. So Brent Key, man, he gets up for big games with the Jackets, and it's definitely the biggest win since he's been the head coach of Georgia Tech. But what do you think about his Jackets going to Dublin and beating the Noles?
My biggest takeaway is just probably how smart I am, because I could feel it. I was just going off vibes. I was worried about Florida State, with all they lost from a year ago, and this, like, especially with how the game started, I feel like that has to make it worse as a Florida State fan to just drive right down the field. Like, it was so easy that first drive, like 4 or 5 minutes, touchdown. It's like, okay, we're gonna do this all day, and it's like you score one more touchdown the whole rest of the game. So that's tough. But just the way Georgia Tech was able to dominate the line of scrimmage, like rushing for almost 200 yards. Like, I think they were I think they led the ACC in rushing a year ago. So they were a good running team. Haynes King is dynamic. Obviously, threw a lot of interceptions a year ago, but we've talked about the moxie, that kind of X factor that Haynes King has when he's going. So, I'd be really encouraged if I was a Georgia Tech fan. This was my team of chaos, right? I didn't know they were going to do it right off the bat. Like, obviously I called it when we were making our predictions last week, but you knew they were going to beat somebody, and Florida State just kind of felt like a team that was a little vulnerable.
Yeah. And look, I think two things can be true here. I think it's a great win for Tech. I also think they're probably going to lose to one of Georgia State and Syracuse here in the next 2 weeks, where I think, to
Georgia
your point,
State?
You never doubt the thirst here.
Oh, man.
But they're going to Syracuse in 2 weeks. They go to Louisville at the end of September. They get Duke at home. They got to go to North Carolina, and then they get greeted with Notre Dame the week after. They go to Blacksburg, and then Miami at home, then NC State at home, and then at Georgia. This is a brutal schedule. Like, I think Florida State will ultimately be okay here. And then when I say okay, it's like 9-3, 8-4 type gap year. But I think one thing is, I don't think it's an overreaction to say this is not a national title contender. This is not going to be a reload season for the Noles and that kind of special year from a year ago. I think Tech's better, but I just think they have a really, really tough schedule ahead of them. But it's a good one to get out there in front. I mean, they're still just trying to go bowling and get to 7-5 and see what it looks like for next year. But to your point, one of the things I wonder, and that I jotted down watching this game, is just Haynes King had 15 carries. I mean, he was 9.1 yards per attempt through the air. He took his shots when he needed to. He was definitely more dynamic than DJU. DJU really, outside of those fourth down conversions late, there was nothing downfield, and there was no playmaking from DJU in that offense for 3.5 quarters. But the three,
can I interject? I'll let you finish your point. I'll go back to DJU. Go ahead.
Well, that's the thing I wrote down is just like the 15 carries. Like Haynes King took some shots, man. He's not a slider. If you watch this game and you're like, Haynes King is a baller, but you got to stay healthy, man. It's gonna be a long year, and you're gonna play a lot of good football teams. And I don't know, if I'm a Tech fan, I don't love that he ran the ball 15 times here and took a lot of shots against what should have been or what we thought coming into the year was going to be one of the better defenses, not only in the ACC, but in the country. But that was something I wrote down of like, I think he's really good with his legs, but Haynes King, man, I don't know if you can get through a full season taking the kind of shots that he was taking in this game.
Yeah, I think that is definitely a concern, especially with his injury history. But to go back to DJU, I just hate how, and this is just the era we live in with social media and everything, but I just hate like the hate that DJU gets. It's like he's like the epitome of why like the toxicity of recruiting rankings. Because if this guy wasn't a 5-star, people just wouldn't have the opinion of him that they have. Like, this guy's played in college. He's been a 3-year starter now coming into this year with Florida State. Like, we know what he is. So to think he's not going to be some average quarterback, that you're not going to have a limited downfield passing game, it's like he is what he is. So it's like, because he's a former 5-star, each new spot gets him, and they're like, oh, this guy used to be a 5-star. Oh, who knows what he could be? It'll all click for us this year. It's like, no, that's just not what he is. He's a super average quarterback, and without the elite playmakers around him that Florida State had a year ago, like, he doesn't really have the guys that he can just be that game manager that he is. So I feel like it's just unfortunate, because I'm not saying DJU is good, but it's like we all knew he wasn't good, right? Like, that didn't change on Saturday. So he has his moments where he looks okay. He's got some athleticism, but he's just a very average college quarterback, and that's not going to be good enough for this year's Florida State team.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those two where DJU I don't think was good, and I think to your point, like the 5-star rating is definitely a part of it. I think he got a lot more credit for what Oregon State was doing on the ground with Damian Martinez, and he was a lot more valuable for those for that Beavers team a year ago, and just their style. And Jonathan Smith is still an elite play caller, and I thought Mike Norvell called a good game for the most part. I mean, this was just a weird game for a lot of reasons. They only Florida State averaged 3.2 yards per attempt on the ground. They really struggled to run the ball. Georgia Tech was able to just stack the box, and they realized that Florida State doesn't have any weapons outside. So Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson are gone, and Malik Benson, I don't think, like I talked about before the week, I was like, I look at this wide receiver room and I just don't love it. Like, it just doesn't really scare me like it did a year ago. Like, they had legitimate NFL weapons for Jordan Travis and company last year, and I don't think that's the case this year. I think they're going to struggle to make plays out wide, and it's just the nature of the beast. I think they're going to have to figure out new ways to win football games that they won a year ago. There were no turnovers in this one, which was kind of wild, especially with how much was on the ground, the rain, the turf, and everything. But no turnovers. I thought this was an interesting nugget from the Associated Press. The win was Georgia Tech's first over a top 10 opponent since a 22-16 victory over the Seminoles in October 2015. They haven't beaten a top 10 team in almost 10 years, Matt Green. And then from the Rumble Seat, a really good Georgia Tech blog that I've read for years over there on SB Nation, they said, quote, all told, Santucci, who is obviously the new DC, came in for Mike Elko from Duke, His unit held FSU to 229 or 91 total yards, a major achievement for a Georgia Tech defense that gave up an average of 437 yards per game last season and had major struggles in the front seven. So I think those two things I thought were interesting, especially the Georgia Tech defense. Like Santucci, I mean, we were texting about Buster Faulkner, and I think he is one of the best offensive coordinators in the country. And Brent Key this is a good staff under him. This is a well-coached Georgia Tech team. This is a team that I think is on the rise. They're obviously recruiting better and better with Key, but I think that defense is going to be a lot better. It doesn't mean they're going to be elite and be like a top 10, top 15 defense, but they definitely made a lot of strides. And I think they were physical. They were the more physical team in the defensive line and the offensive line. I don't know. They were not scared of Florida State from the beginning to the end. And I think they deserve a lot of credit for just coming in there and just playing smash mouth football and just not turn the ball over, but they still took their chances. Like Haynes King still was doing stuff. Haynes was doing a lot of stuff in the backfield.
Haynes King made some great throws under pressure in this game.
And DJU cannot. That's what we should also throw out. DJU was really bad.
Yeah, like I was talking about, like the way Florida State just drove down the field just so easily on the first drive, and Tech just pounded the rock and just responded immediately. Like I felt like that just set the tone, and then just how they ended the game, like the 11 play, like 89-yard drive that just took up like half the third quarter and like the start of the fourth. And then the 12 play drive to just kill the game and just hit the field goal to win it. Like they just kind of, just ran the entire, I don't know what was the time of possession in the fourth quarter. Like they had the ball for I think 25 of the last 30 minutes or 20 of the last 25 minutes of the game or something like that. I don't have that.
I mean, there was just a lot of ball control. It was an incredibly small amount of possessions for both teams as a whole. It was a very short game. It was a game where not a lot of punting going on here. Some crazy field goals that will be lost forever. Like Florida State kicked a bonkers nearly 60-yarder before the half to tie it. That will be lost in the memory of this game, but that was just pretty bonkers.
Little swinging gate after the first touchdown. A little clever play right there. Yeah.
But I also think, what was your gut reaction on towards the end when the Georgia Tech player runs down and he looked like he was maybe going to go out of bounds, but he didn't. Danny Cannell, I think, tweeted out about it. What was your in the moment? Because I'm a big what was your instinct in the moment of because I think that's almost better than instant replay a lot of times, is when you first see the play happen, what was your immediate reaction?
Which play
I think that works for catch. When they're driving down the field, and I mean, it was late in the game. It was, maybe right before he kicked it. I think it was the play right before he kicked it, actually. It was on the left-hand side. He got a first down. I think it was Justice Haynes on the left-hand side, but he gets tackled by two Florida State guys. But it looked like he was going out, but his knee, it was close. It was a close call whether or not he went out of bounds or not. But that would have left 30 to 40 seconds for Florida State. But my thing about that is if you watch this Florida State team and the way that they were driving,
right?
I don't think they were going down the field in 45 seconds. I think we saw it's going to take some time. If they were going to get down the field, it was going to be
where did Danny Cannell play college football again? If I was a Florida State fan, I'm sure I'd have been like, oh yeah, if we have 30 more seconds. But yeah, obviously you have a chance if they rule them out there. But are you winning that game with DJU going 80 yards in 30 seconds? I don't know. Obviously, that's not what you think as a fan, but
yeah,
I don't know. I think Georgia Tech, from watching the game, that was my initial reaction. As soon as that field goal went in, it was just like Georgia Tech was the better team in this game today. Georgia Tech just felt like the better team for most of the day, and their quarterback actually was making some plays back there. They ran the ball so much better than Florida State. They felt like the better team, and they felt like they deserved to win.
I agree. Switching gears here a little bit, Matt Green. CFB predictions. So our CFB prediction show now. We gotta do this. Week 1 is here.
In the future, I guess we got to go before week 0, because I did have some Florida State hot takes that are not hot takes anymore after they lose the season opener. But you live and you learn.
You live and you learn. It's okay. We'll get better. We're getting better every day here, Matt Green. But I think it's by and large, it was one big game. I will say The SMU Nevada game was fun. SMU really on the ropes there. Hawaii took care of business as they should, and all that good stuff. But Montana State just casually beating New Mexico. Shout out to FCS Northwest. There was a good tweet. Montana State. Did you see that? They tweeted out FCS Northwest beat New Mexico, in the game, because they don't have in the college football games, they don't put the FCS schools, and it's always like FCS whatever, but it's pretty fun.
That's great.
But Matt Green, this is your bread and butter before we get into our week 1 preview later on this week, sir. So where do you want to start, and how do you want to go about this?
All right, so to start things off, I think let's just rapid fire. We're gonna get into all these teams. We're gonna get into our bracket for the college football playoff. So we've touched on all these conferences, but let's start off with just our conference champion in each conference. So where you want to start? You want to start in the SEC?
We can start in the SEC.
Okay, in the SEC, I got Georgia beating Texas. What do you have?
Definitely don't have Texas. As people remember from last week's show, I did not. I think Texas is an 8-4, 9-3. I think them and Oklahoma, I think both have a rough year 1 in the SEC and playing an SEC schedule. I'm going to say right now, I agree with you on Georgia, but I think Alabama, and it will be a rematch, I will say. So obviously with them playing early on, I think Georgia loses to Alabama in the regular season, and then I think they beat Alabama in the SEC title game in part 2. So give me Georgia, Alabama in the SEC title game this fall.
Seeing Georgia beat Alabama in Atlanta would be a sight to see, sir. Hopefully we see it one day. Hopefully this is the year.
Yeah. Texas is just too chalk. Like I've never been more certain that a team is not going to live up to the hype than Texas right now. Texas is too chalk, and everyone just putting them on the same pedestal as Georgia. I just think it's a mistake, and everyone wants. And I think part of it is like no one wants to say Bama. No one wants to do it. Like everyone, I'm like Bama was just in the playoff, and they're gonna have a better offense than they did a year ago, and the defense I think is gonna be a little bit better too. Like this is a playoff team last year. I think there's like we talk about Texas being a playoff team and like they're building. I'm like, do we miss that Bama was there with a worse team? Like I think people are really overthinking Bama.
Chase Thomas, Alabama better without Nick Saban. Good riddance.
I'm just saying this year. I mean, obviously Nick Saban's the GOAT. I just think the offense is gonna be really good, and I think the defense is gonna take a little bit of a step forward because I think Kane Womack is a upgrade over Pete Golding. So I mean, I don't know. I just think the defense is gonna be a little bit better.
Nick
and I think
Saban's defense at the end of the day.
Maybe. But Matt Green, where are we going next?
I'm with you though. I'm worried about how high I am on Texas this year. Because I don't want to be high on Texas, but I look at the data. I'm a big data guy, and I'm like, I feel like Texas has got it. So we'll see. And this is exactly how I feel in the Big Ten as well. I got Ohio State over Oregon. I feel like Oregon is that same. They feel more like what you're saying about Texas to me, that like it feels like they're getting too big for their britches. Like I don't feel like Oregon's has earned this yet, right? Like Kalen DeBoer in Washington beat them twice last year. Like they weren't even the best team in the Pac-12. They're just going to come over in the Big Ten. They're going to be running things. Who we have? Herb Street and was it Desmond Howard, both picking Oregon to win it all. I feel like there's a lot of teams out there. Oregon's a trendy pick. I'm skeptical, but I still did it. I still put Oregon in the Big Ten championship, but losing to Ohio State.
I have the same one as you. I don't feel great about Oregon and Ohio State. I still kind of feel like where you do, where it just feels too chalky. But I think it's more likely that it's not chalk in the SEC than it is in the Big Ten, because I think there's just less volatility in the Big Ten. I can't not put Ohio State. I just don't think people understand. You look at Ryan Day's record there, it's still ridiculous. And if you look at Ohio State's record in the regular season since the 21st century, they just don't lose regular season games. Like, we can make jokes about the Michigan losses the last 3 years in a row. We can make jokes about the one title during this really great Ohio State
losing
run.
to a top 3 team and a national champion 3 years in a row. What a garbage organization.
But people make jokes, and I'm like, look at their record and look at who they don't lose in the regular season very often. It's just not something Ohio State does. So I think they could lose to Michigan again and still be right there in the Big Ten title game. So I think, barring a catastrophe, that we've never seen in the 21st century, basically at Ohio State. I think they're gonna waltz into the Big Ten title game. But I also, and you'll learn more about my Oregon stuff here a little bit later, but I think Oregon does live up to the hype. Think this is going to be another rematch. So both of our Power 2 conference title games are rematches here because Ohio State and Oregon play, and Georgia, Alabama play, and then you have Georgia, Texas. So they all play. So it looks like we're on a path of the conference title game being a rematch for the Power 2 here.
I greatly prefer like the early October rematch in December than something like Ohio State and Michigan rematch.
Oh yeah,
the following week. But yeah, that's where we are now. I don't like it. I don't like the potential of teams playing 2, maybe 3 times in a season. But this is the world now. This is where we are.
Absolutely. But did you say you had Georgia winning, right, in the SEC?
Yeah, Georgia over Texas.
Okay, so we both have Georgia winning. Who do you have winning the Big Ten title game?
Ohio State over Oregon.
I have Ohio State too. All right.
Okay, so we're chalk here.
Yeah.
Through the first 2 conferences. So let's go to the Big 12 next. The new look Big 12. This is going to be an interesting looking conference this year. I got the Utah Utes and the Kansas State Wildcats in the Big 12 championship. Who do you got?
I do have the Utes. I think their schedule is really nice. I think Cam Rising, as long as he's healthy, that defense is going to be legit. I think he's going to be solid. Oklahoma State, though, I think, is the team, and I actually have Oklahoma State winning the Big 12. I think they're a playoff team. I think this is an old team. They brought back everybody on both sides of the ball. Ollie Gordon's the best back in the country, maybe. Alan Bowman back for year 97 of his college career. Mike Gundy wins a lot of football games. I think they're going to be a hard-nosed team. I like their schedule. I think Oklahoma State is going to do it. I think Oklahoma State is. This is the year of the Cowboys. I think they max out here and make their playoff and kind of come back down to earth a little bit next year with all these losses. But I think I'm buying a bunch of Cowboy stock. Go Pokes. I think Oklahoma State wins this.
I think long term they are the biggest beneficiary of Oklahoma and Texas bouncing. But give me the Utes, man. I'm liking the Utes to get it done this year. First year in the Big 12. First 3 conferences. I got a newbie in the Big 12 championship. I guess we both. No, you don't have a newbie in the SEC. But I don't know. That's the biggest hesitation I have is the new team immediately winning the conference or in the conference championship. I don't know. I'm doing it though.
Okay. Where are we going next?
Let's keep it going to the ACC. I think we may agree here as well. I would love to see if one of us had Florida State here before this weekend. I don't think I was going to.
I did not. I have been
You're
on
a man of your word. You're a man of your word, so I believe you.
Well, we also have talked about it in our
podcast.
ACC preview. In our ACC preview here, Matt Green, and our buy or sell and stuff. It's like I was not a DJU guy. I've been saying this is a gap year for Florida State all summer, all spring. That I like Cronin Hook, the freshman, the blue chip freshman they've got. I think he's probably the future. I'm gonna buy some Knoll stock next year, but they just don't have the transfer pieces that they did a year ago. I mean, there's no Keon Coleman on this roster. There's no Johnny Wilson. Obviously we know the downgrade, but from Jordan Travis to DJU, but I don't know. I just think they're not going to be awful. I don't think they're falling off a cliff. I just think they're more like a 9-3 team than a 13-0 type team this year.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. So in the ACC, I got Clemson over Miami. Is that another rematch? Are they playing the regular season as well?
I don't.
I'll have to look at that. But Miami just feels like that team that they're a hot off-season team a lot, but it feels like with Cam Ward, I don't know. They feel like they could be more of the real deal this year. Couple recruiting
They don't face
classes.
Clemson. They don't.
They do not.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll definitely help, especially for the college football playoff predictions. But we'll get to that. But yeah, so I got Clemson over Miami. I'm not crazy about the ACC this year, but I think Clemson can still maybe like a 2022, like where no one really looked that good, but Clemson still found a way to win the conference.
I didn't think we were going to agree here because I have the exact same. I have Clemson beating Miami. I think both are going to be really good. I think 9.5 is the over-under for both. But Clemson, I mean, obviously TJ Moore is a dude. Bryant Wesco is a dude. I like Phil Maffa a lot at tailback. I think year 3 for Cade Klubnik. More importantly, second year for Garrett Riley. So Cade's got another full offseason with Garrett Riley. It's hard for me to believe that Garrett Riley doesn't figure it out at Clemson. And we know they're going to have a nasty defense. We know they're going to have a top 15 to 20 scoring defense. I think Clemson's just going to be the best in the conference. I think everyone wants to say Miami right now. I think Miami's going to be solid. But also in a big game, like who are you taking, Mario Cristobal or Dabo Swinney? Like I'm just in this matchup, time to prepare and everything. I think I'm just going to lean on Clemson here. But there is something I will say about Miami in our awards portion of this podcast, but because I do think Miami's going to have an unbelievable year offensively. I'll just go ahead and say that. I think Miami's going to be bonkers good offensively, but I also think Clemson figures it out and is a really balanced team. So I bought a lot of Clemson stock this offseason. So give me Clemson to win the ACC too.
All right, I like it, sir. A little too much agreeing here, but we'll take it. Give me your preseason top 10 team. So let me preface this here. Every year, it seems like I could go back further, but I only went back 2 years in my data here. Didn't get huge into the data there, but it's not important right now. In 2023, USC preseason top 10 finished unranked. 2022, we had 3 of them. We had Texas A&M, Oklahoma, and Baylor all start preseason top 10, all lose 7 games that year. So it seems to happen every single year. Obviously, we'll take this a step past, because this is my prediction right here was Florida State, that they were the preseason top 10 team most likely to finish unranked after losing the season opener. People seeing, oh yeah, DJU is who we thought he was. I think no one's really gonna disagree with that. They could still finish ranked, of course, but let's take Florida State off the table. Who's the next team in the preseason top 10 that could potentially finish unranked?
Well, it's the one I would have said it either way. I think it's Michigan. I think Michigan finishes 8-4. I don't think they finish ranked. I think it's a bad year for Michigan. I'm just everything about this just this season, the post Harbaugh era. I just think it's a coming back down to earth. They lose the most amount of guys to the NFL draft of any team. A lot of turnover. I don't think I'm not a big Alec Orji guy. We'll see what he can do, but I wouldn't be really optimistic in that regard. New coach, new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator. It's just a lot of turnover, man. I think this screams an 8-4 type year. Donovan Edwards, really good player, but I don't know. Everything about this situation to me screams big comeback down to earth, TCU to almost vibe for the Wolverines this year. I think they're going to be an 8-4 type team. I think they're not. It would not surprise me if they're unranked. I think the number 2 pick here is Ole Miss.
Hold on.
Oh.
Before you get into Ole Miss, because I feel like Ole Miss has some volatility. Full disclosure, 8 of the preseason top 10 I have in my college football playoff. One of the ones I do not have is Florida State. The other top 10 preseason top 10 I do not have in my college football playoff is the Alabama Crimson Tide. And I think it's a crazy thing to even throw out the idea of Alabama not finishing top 25. But I just look at this because you threw out Ole Miss. Like I feel like it's kind of what Ole Miss has been recently. It's kind of why I'm trying to forget what I think about what I've thought about Ole Miss, because it feels like defensively with just some of these transfers they're bringing in, it feels like they're really building it from a line of scrimmage out. They're doing a lot in the portal. So I'm a typical Ole Miss hater, that. But I just look at Alabama and it's like with how well Nick Saban coached this team a year ago. It's like you got the number 1 team in the country coming to town in week 4 or 5 of the Kalen DeBoer era. Like you got to go to Knoxville to play Tennessee. You got to go to Death Valley to play LSU. You got Missouri, and I'm not necessarily buying Missouri, but this is a preseason top 10 team or top 11 team, and one of the best Missouri teams maybe ever. And that team is also coming to town. You got to go to Oklahoma. Auburn is always a rock fight. So I don't know. Nick Saban was experienced in all of these things, and Kalen DeBoer, like the SEC is a different beast. And I think Alabama, like we just kind of took it for granted that they find ways to win all these games that are close. And within a new era, I don't know. Alabama's got some volatility this year.
Yeah, but we've talked about Alabama with, here's the thing. They haven't lost a lot. I think you can make the case. I think they're more, they might have, I think they have a higher floor than they did a year ago. I will bang that drum because I thought Alabama was an 8-4 team last year. I talked about their Iowa ass offense. I mean, they were on the ropes at South Florida.
Iowa's never had a quarterback that fast.
It was, I mean, Tyler Buckner started a game for them. He's not playing lacrosse. Like it's a little bit different this season for Alabama. I just think I'm still a big believer in the floor. And Kalen DeBoer, he just wins. It's kind of like the Ohio State thing where you go through, he has like 12 career losses over his head coaching tenure. Like he has one non-10 win season, and it was year 2 at Fresno. The first year was COVID, and he was 9-3. I just think he's an elite coach. I think he's one of the 5 best coaches in the sport. Alabama did really well replacing Nick Saban. I think he's just going to keep this thing humming to a real degree post Nick Saban. And I think I would just bet on the stability there. Nick Saban's still got an office there. Like I just don't think I don't think the Crimson Tide are going anywhere. It pains me to say this. Like I think you and I would both like to see a changing of the guard a little bit here, and Alabama kind of fade out for a little while. But I just don't. I don't. In my heart of hearts, I can't be a college football analyst here, Matt Green, and say that if I don't believe it. I don't. I think Alabama's going to hang around. I think they're still going to contend, and I wouldn't be surprised if Kalen DeBoer won a title at Alabama. I think Ole Miss just has the ball tonight. Go ahead.
You wouldn't be surprised if Alabama won a championship this year?
It wouldn't surprise me. No, it wouldn't be like the biggest.
Oh man, I would be shocked if Alabama won a national championship this year.
Shocked.
I would be shocked.
I mean, they're like top 3 in the blue chip ratio again. I mean, they might have a Heisman quarterback. The
blue chip ratio. You know how I feel about the blue chip.
I know that's how you feel, but I'm saying Kalen DeBoer just guided a less talented team to the national title. What did
Michigan?
Year.
I mean, was Michigan? Were they top 10, top 12 in the blue chip ratio a year ago?
They were somewhere in the top 14.
I mean, that team just had like 14 draft picks. It's like if that team isn't top 10 in the blue chip ratio, like your ratio is kind of garbage. You know, like.
Well, what I'm saying ultimately is he got a less talented Washington team to the national title. I just think Kalen DeBoer can flat out coach, and to be surprised if Kalen DeBoer with an Alabama roster.
I would just be shocked year 1 if he does it. Like
I don't think you can say shocked. I would be surprised. I think is the right way to frame it. I would be surprised if Kalen DeBoer won a title in year 1. But I wouldn't be shocked. Like you should never be shocked at Alabama winning a national championship in football, Matt Green. I don't know why. Like you've been asleep.
Surprised and shocked are kind of synonyms, are they not?
No, because shocked is like surprised. I'm like, I didn't know. Like surprised is like I go out to get ice cream with my wife, and I feel like I know her pretty well, and then she gets something that I thought she was like she's usually a mint chocolate chip ice cream person, and then she goes and gets like. A vanilla, and I'm like, I didn't think she would get
vanilla at home.
Yeah, like that's what. It wouldn't blow my mind. It would just be a little bit of a surprise. Now, if my wife was like, I don't know. I guess you get what I'm saying. But shocked would be if my wife was like, we're not going to get ice cream. I'm
if she wants like mustard flavored ice.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, whoa, exactly. Yeah.
Sure. But it's still semantics, But yeah, I would be surprised if they do it year 1. And for the record, I'm not picking. Florida State's the pick here, right? I'm on the record. Florida State's the top 10 team that finishes unranked. But
Can I also say I think they finish ranked? I'm actually going to say they finish ranked. I just think it's like 24th. Yeah, 20th, 24th.
Yeah, probably the lowest of the preseason top 10. Yeah. And I think I could just see Alabama most likely finishing like 13, 14, maybe they're even top 12. But because of those conference champs and the G5 team, you know, they're on the outside looking in, but I'm not.
Kalen DeBoer has a problem if they finish unranked, like a serious problem if they finish unranked.
But it's year 1. I feel like
I don't care.
I don't really.
It's not a different era, man. You're not taking over for John. You're not taking over for Shula here. You're taking over for Nick Saban, who left.
It's all about vibes, though. Like if LSU and Georgia, LSU and Georgia are like 2 top 5 teams or something like that, and like. Wisconsin wins the Big 12 or something. Like, I didn't even name at Wisconsin. Like, that's the third game of the season, hostile environment. But I don't know. I think we've seen this team the last couple of years play a lot more closer games than the previous decade of the Bama dynasty. And without Nick Saban, maybe some of those go the other way.
I think we should, like, for me, I think Ole Miss is the number 2 for me and a clear number 2. I would throw in Notre Dame as the sneakiest. Just if Riley Leonard can't stay healthy, and he's been banged up all offseason, like, what if they kind of don't live up to the hype? I mean, their schedule's not terrible.
That's
but
a good call. And I don't think anyone has not had them in their playoff. Like, there's
right?
not one prediction that doesn't have Notre Dame in it.
But let's throw it out here, man. Like, they go to A&M to open the year. They got to go to Purdue. Purdue might be feisty on the road. They get Louisville at home, top 25 team. They go to Georgia Tech, who now looks a lot more feisty than they did before. You still get Florida State at home. You go to USC. I mean, I don't know. There's some 4 or 5 loss volatility there if things go really awry. Like, I don't know. I think Notre Dame is like one of those teams we've all penciled in for 10 plus wins and a playoff spot. But would it really shock a lot of people if they finish unranked? Like, I don't know. I think there's a path. I think it would be like I said, it would be a surprise, but I don't think I'd be shocked if Notre Dame finished like 8-4 and unranked.
No, I'm kind of with you there, especially with the health of Riley Leonard the last couple years. I was trying to flip through my Phil Steele Bible here to figure out who Notre Dame's backup is, because like this is a team that's gone to the portal 2 years in a row now. It's like you usually don't have. That's not a good way to build depth in the quarterback room, having to go to the portal to get your starter multiple years in a row. So
yeah.
It'll be interesting to see, because that's obviously been that was a huge talking point with Duke in 2023. Is this team with Riley Leonard was really dangerous, but unfortunately, there's a lot of games they had to play without him.
Absolutely. Where are we going next, Matt Green?
Next here, I'm going game of the year. So not necessarily, like a Oregon, Ohio State, preseason 2 and 3, or Georgia, Texas, preseason 1 and 4. Just what's a game that you got to have a feeling like this is going to be a lot of fun. This is going to be the game of the year. Hit me.
No, you go ahead. You have yours.
You want me to start this off?
And I'm surprised that you think this is going to be the game of the year.
So I think game of the year this year, I wish I had the date. Oh, I got it. There you go. Saturday, September 21st. Tennessee Volunteers going to Gaylord Family Memorial Stadium to play the Oklahoma Sooners. First game in the SEC for Oklahoma. I don't know if you remember Missouri's first game in the SEC. It was that night game versus Georgia where Jarvis Jones just single-handedly took over the second half, playing grown man football. I think they say Georgia plays old man football or something like that in the pregame. Mm-hmm. But that atmosphere was just absolutely insane. Like being that first game in the SEC, like a team like Tennessee coming to town, and then you got the added Heupel returning to Oklahoma. Maybe there's some bad blood there, maybe he's their next head coach. Who knows? Who knows how they feel?
I don't think here's the thing.
It's going to be Nico's kind of first game on like the national spotlight, right?
NC State will be on the national spotlight in week 2.
NC State, that's nothing.
It's a top 25 game in Charlotte.
Nice little warm up. This Oklahoma Tennessee game, it feels like that kind of game that's just going to be a lot of fun. Like Texas, Oklahoma was a year ago. It's just I can just feel it. This is going to be. I hope this is a night game. This needs to be a nice 8:00 game.
Okay, I respectfully disagree with all of this. I think Tennessee's going to be in some fun games this fall. Oklahoma is not one of them. I think Tennessee, Florida will be nauseating, but fun and back and forth.
See, that won't be fun for Tennessee fans. If they're in a close game with Florida, they'll be miserable the whole time.
But I think Tennessee, Alabama at home will also be a lot of fun and very memorable and back and forth. I think my gut says Heupel's had one stinker on the road in the SEC the last 2 years. 2 years ago at South Carolina and last year at Florida. Just winning on the road in the SEC is tough. We know that. you say at 8 o'clock game, that's a recipe for disaster for this Tennessee team. Oklahoma fans getting all day to get hammered and to heckle, Heupel, this, that, and the other. It's Heupel's first game back at Oklahoma. Obviously, it means it's going to mean a lot for Heupel to get a win here. It's Oklahoma's first SEC game. Game day might be here. I think it's more of like an LSU type deal where you want this to be the nooner, where you want to get in there. It's daytime. The crowd's not really into it.
Do what you want, sir.
You want a nooner or 11 a.m. local kick. If you're Tennessee, kind of like what you got with LSU 2 years ago. But I don't think there's a way this game's close. I think one or the other happens. I think Tennessee either has a horrible, just all systems fail. Nico struggles on the road in his first SEC game and they lose by double digits, or I think Tennessee wins by double digits. I don't actually think this is going to be like a close down to the wire type game. I think one or the other happens. I think Tennessee either has an awful night to forget, like against Mizzou a year ago, where they went to Mizzou and just got smacked around for a little bit, and then they went back home and regrouped, or Tennessee just shuts up Norman and kind of blows out and like, welcome to the SEC type deal, and Nico starts his Heisman campaign here a little bit. So my gut says Oklahoma, Tennessee's not close one way or the other.
It'll be interesting. Do you have one that sticks out? I can throw another one out there.
Yeah, well, here's what it is. And I think people are going to go the other way. And I'm curious what you think as a Georgia fan and where Georgia fans are at. Because I think all national attention, and I think kind of because you put Georgia and Texas in the SEC title game here, Matt Green, I think if you ask any Georgia fan, they're most excited about Georgia, Texas. And everyone is nationally is going to be like Georgia, Texas, Georgia, Texas, Georgia, Texas. Here's the problem with that is I think Georgia just might go and just smack Texas around. My gut tells me Georgia actually handles Texas pretty well. I don't think Georgia handles Alabama well on the road in Tuscaloosa here. And I think that one is going to catch some people by surprise because I think even that Alabama just beat the Georgia Bulldogs, the best team, you can make the case still, was the best team last year, beat them in the SEC title game. That, I think, is going to be the best game of the year. Like, I think that might be a game between two of the best teams this year. I'm a bigger believer in Alabama than I am Texas. I think Bama is going to give Georgia a much better game than Ole Miss or Texas will. So I think anyone who's throwing Georgia, Texas, or Georgia, Ole Miss, I disagree. I think it's going to be Alabama because I think that's the one that's going to be the hardest for Georgia to win and keep the regular season undefeated streak intact. My gut is it's Bama, and I think a lot of Georgia fans are overlooking that and are really excited about Texas, and everyone's putting tier 1 Texas, tier 1 Georgia. You come at the king, you best not miss. Like, Alabama still has something to say. Like, Alabama's not gone. Like,
Alabama's not the king, sir.
I mean, he was just
Alabama's
in the
not the king.
Saban's got he'll be there. He'll be around. I mean, game day will probably be there. Saban will be on campus. Like, it's going to be, all I'm saying is Georgia has not really vanquished the Crimson Tide. I don't think they're scared of Texas. They're definitely not scared of Ole Miss. I think it's one of those, they go to Tuscaloosa, that environment, what it's going to look like, trying to just beat Alabama again. Last time you were there was the COVID year. That wasn't the same environment. My gut is that's going to be an all-time great game. I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be extremely physical. I think it's going to be very competitive. My gut is Bama, Georgia is actually what steals the show and is Georgia's best game this fall. That's my gut.
I like that. And I think you are spot on in that it's kind of crazy that Georgia, Alabama is almost being overlooked a little bit, like with the Georgia, Texas game that so many people are excited about.
And Georgia, Ole Miss, I think there's a lot of talk about like, oh, they got to go to Ole Miss this time. And it's like, they just obliterated Ole Miss last year.
Any Georgia fan that knows what they're talking about is definitely circling Tuscaloosa more than Oxford. Not that they're not both challenges on the road, but we know the recent history with Alabama. Like that's not just going to be some cakewalk. But yeah, that's a good call because I think some people are overlooking that to this point.
Did you have another one you said you were going to throw out?
I don't even know if this is a hot take because it was like it would maybe just be a repeat of last year, but I just feel like Ole Miss has got to be in some fun games, I don't know, like LSU, Ole Miss, like just something where defense is optional type games. Like, I don't know. I think Ole Miss, they're just going to be a fun team to watch, I would imagine this year.
And it's also like, I think part of why I think Michigan, Ohio State will be even more fun this year is Michigan's down and they might come into that game with 3 losses. it's only going to ramp up the pressure for Ryan Day and the Buckeyes. They might be undefeated, and a 3-loss, just down Michigan team comes in, and then that's when like the heat ramps up a little bit more. It's like if you don't get over the hump now, like Michigan's down, and if they still beat you, even if you go 11-1 and go to the Big Ten title game, you still lose to this version of Michigan. I don't know. I think Michigan, Ohio State's got to be in the top 3 somewhere because like 4 in a row, like it always is. But also Michigan, I think, will come in worse than they have obviously in the last 3 years. And I just think that actually only ramps up the pressure it's going to be an unbelievable tension Saturday in Columbus.
That's definitely true. As a fan that experienced the Georgia-Florida rivalry, under Mark Richt, that's basically, when Rick took over, Florida was a powerhouse. So you lost them a couple years ago. Okay, well, they're a powerhouse. And then they went downhill, but they were still beating you. So it's like, wait, you're supposed to be better than them. You are better than them now, but sometimes for some reason you're losing to them head to head. And then you look up and then Florida's corrected it. And now they're dominating you and they're better than you. So it could be tricky for Ohio State, but I would think with Jim Harbaugh, it could be different this year, but I don't know. Michigan's just one of those teams. Maybe they're more of a chaos team. Maybe they're a playoff team, but they're a team I don't think anyone really knows what to expect from in 2024.
Yeah. Where are we going next, Matt Green?
All right. Next, our award, we're not going to get into all the awards, so let's just go with the Heisman Trophy, sir. Who you got winning the Heisman this year?
I was going back through the history. Not a lot of guys who win the Heisman, their team win the national title the same year. There's not a great track record of winning the Heisman and then winning the national title.
So I know recent history, Devontae Smith and Derrick Henry both won it. Are those the only ones that have, and Joe Burrow? Those are probably the only one in the recent history.
That's what I'm saying.
Cam.
And like, it just isn't happen there. It doesn't happen very often. And you would think it happens a lot more. So my reflex was, because of who I put in the national title game and who I have winning it all, to give him this nod. But I was like, who is most likely? Because I think you still have to be in the CFP now, in the mod. Like, I think it's not going to be a non-CFP team to win the Heisman. I think that's just with the expansion and everything else. I just think it's going to be really hard to get the narrative win if you can't win 9 or 10 games or be right there. You know what I mean? Like, I'll be surprised.
Would Louisville have been a CFP team with Lamar Jackson?
It's a good question. Probably, right?
They're probably right around the mark.
I think it's Cam Ward. I think Cam Ward is a smart money here, where I think he's going to put up bonkers numbers in Miami this fall. I think Miami's going to be in the ACC title game, and I also think Miami's going to be an at-large back-end CFP team. I think ACC gets 2, and with Clemson and Miami. So I think Cam Ward has all the makings of putting up a final crazy college football stat line here at Miami with Damian Martinez and company. I think the Miami offense is going to be electric. I really do think they put it all together, and Cam Ward has like the best statistical season of any quarterback in the country this year. That's my gut, and I think he ultimately wins the Heisman. It's a quarterback-driven award, obviously. I think he's going to put up crazy stats. I think the narrative will be there for him because I think he'll beat Florida State. He has an opportunity to start out of the gate here. If he beats Florida and shows out, the hype train on Cam Ward will be there pretty early on.
Is Florida going to build the hype? Is that a game that's big?
It's going to be. I mean, it's 3:30 in the afternoon. I think everyone's going to be watching Florida Miami
on the road, hostile environment.
Yeah. Like, if Cam Ward plays well there, it's a great way to start off the Heisman campaign. If you're Cam Ward, so I don't know, older player. I just think Cam Ward is my most likely. So I'm going Cam Ward to win the Heisman.
I didn't want to do this, but I felt like, and I've never done it before. I want the record to be noted. But for the first time in my life, I think I am predicting a Georgia player to win the Heisman. I got to give it to Carson Beck. I feel like if you look at what Georgia was a year ago, and they were playing more close games, I would say, last year than they did in 2022 or 2021 for that matter. So I think Stetson, his numbers kind of fool you a little bit. I think Stetson could have had bigger Heisman type numbers if he was playing more fourth quarters of games. With this Georgia schedule, like, I think Georgia in general just kind of doesn't they don't air it out when they're up, 3, 4, 5 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, third quarter like that, like typically. But even with that, Carson Beck was throwing for 4,000 yards a year ago. So I think with Georgia, with a much more difficult schedule this year than a year ago, like I think Georgia's going to be playing a lot more 4-quarter games. And I think Georgia's going to be one of the best teams in college football. And I just look around like Will Howard, like I think Ohio State's going to be great this year. Like Will Howard, I can't pick Will Howard to win the Heisman, right? Like I don't know who. Yeah, we can start to talk like Travis Hunter, but they never do that. Like obviously Devontae Smith and Derrick Henry, like the only non-quarterbacks in the last like 10, 15 years. So I look at the best quarterback on the best team, and it's not just like he's a game manager. Like Carson Beck is going to be the Georgia offense, especially losing guys like Bowers and McConkey. I feel like you kind of have that talking point that, he's the senior leader and they lost some playmakers, but he's the guy that makes the offense go. I think Carson Beck is the guy that wins the Heisman this year.
One Heisman in the last 40. I mean, what was it? The guy in 1942. Not a lot of Georgia guys going.
Two Heismans, yeah, two Heismans ever. Sinkwich in 42, and obviously Herschel in 1882. Herschel should have been a two-timer, but we'll get past that.
Do you want to get into our CFP bracket here, Matt Green?
Yeah, let's get into the CFP bracket. But first, we know one of the formulas of the CFP bracket, just to let our listeners know, the formula for getting to the CFP. We got the top 4 buys are the 4 highest ranked conference champions. And then you get the next however we got left. Next 7 of the next 8 are at large teams. And then the highest ranked G5 team is going to make the playoffs. So let's start with the G5 team, because that's most likely going to be the 12 seed in most people's bracket. I think it's the 12 seed in both of our brackets. So I was doing a deep dive here. In the playoff era, who would have been the G5 team that would have gotten in each year, right? So 31 G5 teams finished in the top 25 in the CFP era, right? 17 of those came from the American Conference. Unfortunately for them, only 9 are still of teams that are still in the American Conference. But you look at who the top ranked team would have been in those 10 years of the 14 playoff. 7 of those years, it would have been a team from the American. One time it would have been Mountain West with Boise State back in 2014. You had Liberty last year would have been from Conference USA, and then Western Michigan would have been the team back in PJ Fleck and the gang went undefeated. The only time the MAC ever has had a top 25 team actually in the last 10 years. So looking at that, I had to break it down kind of who I thought the best qualifiers were to make the college football playoff. You can disagree if I'm missing someone here, but the 4 candidates I came up with here are UT San Antonio, Memphis, Boise State, and Liberty. Am I missing anybody? You like these so far?
I think I had as my dark horse, I had South Florida, but that's a pretty big dark horse.
Okay. So USF could be on there.
I'm trying to think who else would really. I mean, I think App State is probably one. You didn't say App State, right?
I did not throw App State in there.
I would throw App State in there too. I think App State's got a nice schedule, and I can see them.
The Sun Belt would never have had the highest ranked G5 team in the CFP era so far. Yeah. Just to throw that out there. But so with my 4 I took, so I don't have App State or USF right in front of me, but I'm looking at it like this is still a beauty pageant, right? Like you can say what the top 4, like people love to talk about, like, I mean, we do on this podcast about how like, oh, if the rankings were what they've been in 2016, this would have been the 12-team playoff, right? But once the actual like rubber hits the road, like they're going to manipulate these rankings. They're like, I'm not really feeling them at 13. Let's throw them at 12, right? So I think at the end of the day, this G5 thing is going to be kind of like not the relegation, because that's like a bad thing, but in the English Premier League, it's like it becomes an alternate storyline at the end of the year of like the teams battling for relegation, right? So it's like, oh, we're talking about the teams at the top. Obviously, these teams are good. we're talking about the teams at the top, it becomes a second storyline. It's like, oh, who's that G5 team that gets in? So looking at UT San Antonio, we're still probably looking at records, right? At the end of the day, they have at number 4 Texas on their schedule. Like that's not great for them. You look at Boise State, they have at number 3 Oregon on the schedule. Like that's probably not an undefeated season. They also have Washington State and Oregon State, whatever conference you want to count them as.
But they get both those games at home.
There is that. And I mean, you also talk about some data points. Like that could potentially help Boise State in the beauty pageant. Liberty has none of those games. So they most likely are the one looking at a 12-0 record.
They have App State at home, right?
Liberty?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have their schedule pulled up right in front of me, but
that's their only like coin flip game, or they will not be favored.
But I look at Memphis. Memphis has at Florida State. And Cincinnati, when they made the college football playoff a couple years ago, they had to have that one data point on the schedule, and it's that win over Notre Dame. And we talked about it at the time. It's like Cincinnati, Notre Dame is automatically going to get a certain amount of respect. As long as Cincinnati stays unbeaten, they're going to be one spot ahead of Notre Dame. So if Florida State can get right, they're a team that's also susceptible. Like we just saw what Georgia Tech did to Florida State. Memphis could potentially be looking at a win in their big time at a conference schedule game. And I think if Memphis is able to get a win over Florida State, they might even be able to drop a game in conference. And you've seen the AAC just demands more respect than the other conferences. So long-winded way of saying my prediction for the G5 team and that 12 seed is the Memphis Tigers.
I don't hate it. They went 10-3 a year ago. I don't know. 8-3, 2020, 6-6, 7-6, 10-3. He's 17-15 all time in the AAC. Ryan Silverfield, that is. I don't like. They have an older quarterback with Seth. I mean, you get Elijah Herring coming in from Tennessee here at linebacker, but I don't hate this pick. Like, it would not surprise me if it ended up being Memphis. But for me, I put it in as Boise. I think Boise, you kind of outlined some of the stuff that I think is going to help them. One thing that's going to help them is I think the narrative. I think they're known. They've beat Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl. Like when you get these people in the room, they're going to like Boise is going to have a brand recognition of like, oh, this could be fun. Like ratings, if we're going to put a G5 team in here, they might be able to hang with some of these schools. Like there's a way, there's a path to like selling why Boise State would be really fun to hang here. I think they need to be respectable at Oregon. I think that one is going to be huge for them. They can't get the doors blown off them at Oregon. Doesn't mean they have to win, but I think that needs to be a game for as long as humanly possible. I think they probably need to sweep Washington State and Oregon State at home. They go to Wyoming, who should be solid. I mean, UNLV is a good team. They got to go on the road there against Barry Odom's group. I think Boise, to me, is going to get benefit of the doubt. I think they're going to be good defensively. I think they're going to be probably 10-2, 11-1 is my gut. And I just think they're going to get the credit. I think Boise is just going to have some cachet in the room if it's down to Boise or Liberty. I think the problem with Liberty is like, it's very, very hard to go 24-0 in back-to-back years, even with Caden Salter back in company. I think if they get tripped up once, it's over. The only way they're in the conversation is if they're undefeated. But even still, I think it's going to be hard for Chad Walt's team to get the nod here if there's a 10-2, 11-1 Boise / Memphis team, because I think they're drink the schedule and they're just going to feel like a better team than Liberty. And part of it's Liberty's not playing anybody. Like that schedule, there is nobody on that regular season schedule for Liberty to really, outside of App State, to trip them up. But I'm with you. Like
12-0 record always looks good.
It does, but then you dive in. Like it takes 2 seconds to dive in and go, this is it. Okay. You didn't play at Oregon. You didn't play whatever at Florida State. Like that's easy to look at and go, all right, not all 12-0s are built the same. So I would be surprised if it's Liberty, but I am actually with you where my gut is it's one of 3 teams. I think it's either Boise, Memphis, or App State. That's my gut as to who gets the G5 spot this year. That's my gut.
Yeah, and like I was saying too, like last year, like Liberty would have been the team, but they were 22 and SMU was 23. So it's like they ranked him that way because there was no it didn't matter. But if it actually matters, you might
I think
dive into the
SMU
resume
probably gets in there
a little bit more. Yeah. So we'll see with that. Boise State, though, you think they're just going down to Paulson Stadium, Statesboro, Georgia, week 1 and getting
They're almost
victory?
3 touchdown favorites there. Did you see that? That line's like 15 or 16, I think.
Is that right?
Yeah, in favor.
I don't know. Georgia Southern, watch out. Sneaky team. Boise State could start 0-2.
I mean, then it's over. If they start 0-2, it's over. Like the Boise.
I'm just joking. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible.
I'm not picking the Eagles, but sure. So let's get to the bracket, sir.
Yeah, let's run through. How about this? You run through yours, and then I'll comment and stuff, and then we can run through mine to make it easier. Just get through your whole.
You want to start with the top 4? Let's start.
Just get through the whole thing.
Okay. So top 4 teams I see getting buys. We got 1 Georgia, 2 Ohio State, 3 Clemson, the ACC champion, and 4 Utah. Then we got the at-large. We got number 5 Oregon, 6 Texas, 7 Notre Dame, 8 Penn State, 9 the Michigan Wolverines, 10 Miami, 11 Ole Miss, and 12 the G5 representative Memphis Tigers.
Okay.
All right. So you just hit me with your list, and then we can talk about it.
I have 1 Ohio State, 2 Georgia, 3 Clemson, 4 Oklahoma State. Then I have 5 Alabama, 6 Oregon, 7 Tennessee, 8 Penn State, 9 LSU, 10 Notre Dame, 11 Miami, 12 Boise.
So a lot of similarities there. We both got Penn State hosting that first round playoff game on campus.
I've seen Penn State Ole Miss a lot in that first round, that 8-9 game. Penn State LSU was a brutal spot. Like, I would love this. Like, LSU having to go up in the cold, but also the pressure with Penn State hosting. They might do a whiteout. That environment, if you do Penn State LSU, those two fan bases and everything, playoff, that would be a lot of fun. But I
don't care what they say. If I'm a Penn State fan, it's a whiteout. We're hosting a playoff game. I'm wearing white. I don't know what any of you people are doing. I'm wearing white.
I mean,
and I probably am wearing white, because that is my second favorite college football team.
Well, my bracket, let me just go ahead and tell you, Matt Green is actually perfect. I hope this all happens to chalk, because this is like, folks, if you want an all-time great bracket, look at mine. Here's why. Bama, Boise in the first round. Boise having nothing to lose to go down to Tuscaloosa. That'd be fun. Like Kalen DeBoer's first playoff game with Alabama. They have to host Boise. I think they'll win, but that'll be fun. I think to see Boise go in there with nothing to lose, kind of like Oklahoma years ago. Then you go Miami, the Cristobal Bowl. Miami and Oregon. They got to go to Oregon, which I think will be electric between Dylan Gabriel and Cam Ward. That's great. Like, you get Marcus
Cristobal Bowl. These things name themselves for sure.
Yeah. Notre Dame at Tennessee. The pageantry there. Notre Dame, Tennessee. You go to Neyland for a home playoff game. Notre Dame's fans try that is just we know the Georgia Notre Dame games have evolved.
Yeah, we had a little Tennessee Notre Dame series back. It was like 03,
Samardzija and Brady Quinn.
So.
Yeah.
Was there like a big punt return? Tennessee muffed a punt in one of those games. Something happened. I can't remember.
I have to go back, but yeah, no. So that's a great one. So I don't know. I feel like mine. I might be a little biased, but I think my first round it's hard to beat. That's a great first round.
The one thing that I don't think you took into account, and I don't know that the committee is going to take into account, but this is my playoff, damn it, and I can do what I want. And I'm trying to avoid the rematches, right? We already talked about these 3 conference championship rematches that we'd broken down. So in that 8-9 matchup, luckily this year we don't get it. So let's get it in the playoff. We got Penn State, Michigan. Like, let's do this thing. We missed out on it in the regular season. We're not going to miss it in December. Probably snowing in that game. It'll be awesome. December 20th, 21st. Memphis, Oregon. We got Dan Lanning, the former Memphis guy. That'll be fun. Texas, Ole Miss. Texas plays a lot of teams in the SEC. They do not play Ole Miss this year. So that'll be fun. And then we got Notre Dame, Miami in the first round. Then winning those games, I got Penn State beating Michigan, playing Georgia in the second round, Oregon beating Memphis, playing Utah in the second round. They can't avoid the Utes. They're going to have to get through the Utes to accomplish what they want. Hopefully they don't have flashbacks. What was it, 2022, where Utah beat the brakes off them twice?
I think so.
And then we got Texas beating Ole Miss. So I got Clemson, Texas in that 3-6. And then Miami upsetting Notre Dame, that 10-7. And we got Ohio State and Miami in the second round.
Okay. I have Bama beats Boise, Oregon beats Miami, Tennessee beats Notre Dame, and then the one road win, LSU beats Penn State.
All right, so next round, who's getting to the Final Four?
So
do we call it the Final Four? Do they come up with something? Like the hockey does the Frozen Four?
Yeah, let's just not.
We call it the Football Four. What do we call it?
Let's call it the Final Four. I have Ohio State beating Alabama, and then I have Oregon. Or excuse me, that's the Final Four. We're not in the Final Four yet, Matt Green.
To get
Ohio State beats LSU, Georgia beats Tennessee, Oregon beats Clemson, so that's a road upset for them, and then Bama beats Oklahoma State.
Okay, so these are going to be the Fiesta Peach, Rose, and Sugar Bowls. So we'll probably see Ohio State. Think they choose the Rose Bowl if they want it?
I think that's right.
Just the pageantry, and then Georgia probably in the Peach Bowl, and Clemson in like the Sugar Bowl or something. Oklahoma State on the Fiesta Bowl. I'm sure they'd like that. So in mine, I got Georgia beating Penn State, Oregon beating Utah, Texas beating Clemson, and Ohio State beating Miami. So in the Final Four, we got Georgia, Oregon, and Ohio State versus Texas.
Okay. My Final Four.
We could be having like a third time some of these teams are going to face. Who knows?
Yeah. I have Oregon State, Ohio State, Oregon, Bama, and Georgia. And then I have in the Final Four, Ohio State beats Alabama, and then Oregon upsets Georgia in the Final Four.
Wow. I'd be real disappointed if Dan Lanning got Kirby this quick with how Nick Saban had that record versus former assistants. I hope Kirby can build up something similar, But I'd be real disappointed about that. But in the Final Four, the Orange and the Cotton Bowls on January 9th and 10th, we got Georgia is going to beat Oregon. So we both have that game. So that's kind of cool. And then Ohio State is going to beat Texas. So 2 opportunities for a rematch, but we avoid it. And we get a 2022 Peach Bowl rematch of Georgia and Ohio State. And this time, Ohio State's lining up for a game-winning field goal, and they miss it wide right. And then it becomes a whole thing like Miami and Florida State. And Georgia wins the national championship. Third time.
So seriously, you do have Georgia beating Ohio State.
I do. I think Georgia should be the best team in college football this year.
I have Ohio State losing as well in the national title, but I have them losing to the Oregon Ducks. I think Dan Lanning gets his first year in the Big Ten. I think Oregon wins the national title. I think Dylan Gabriel. I think they do it. I think there's going to be Ohio State in my bracket. They have to beat 2 SEC teams just to get to the national championship game. I think they're going to get beat up a little bit here. I think in my bracket, Oregon's just riding this high after upsetting Georgia. I think Dylan Gabriel is going to have an unbelievable year. I love what Oregon did in the portal. I think Oregon, you can make the case. I understand that Ohio State is deep and they're top heavy, this, that, and the other. I'm still just not the biggest Will Howard guy. I still have a hard time seeing Will Howard being the quarterback that wins it all for Ohio State this year. I think Dylan Gabriel has all the tools and the keys here. I think Oregon is just loaded from top to bottom. My gut is it's going to be Oregon. I think Oregon wins it all in the national championship game here. I love the Evan Stewart. Evan Stewart, Trayshawn Holden, and Tez Johnson. I mean, Jordan James going to be good. No Whittington. I mean, Terrence Ferguson, a tight end. I think they're going to be really good. Jordan Birch on the edge. I just think they're going to be really good all over the place. And I think Dan Lanning is going to get a title sooner rather than later at Oregon. So give me the Ducks to win their first national championship here.
Wow. The 6th seed. People would love anyone who wanted the playoff expanded would love the 6th seed winning it in the first go round. That would I don't know. Oregon, you're all in on the Ducks. How are people going to feel about seeing Oregon, Ohio State play 3 times in the college football season if that happens?
I don't know. It's a good question.
I got a couple bold predictions for you real quick here, sir. Just rapid fire. Just stop me if you want to say anything. People are going to be absolutely pissed about the auto bid conference champion bye this year. Not the conference championship bid, but the top 4 bye, automatic bye. People are going to be furious about it.
I don't think so.
My hot take is that the Big 12 championship will not have either team in the top 12. It's going to be like number 14 versus like number 18 or something like that. And that team is going to get a 4 seed. And people are going to be furious. And the ACC championship is going to be like number 8 versus like number 10 or something like that. And one of those teams is going to get a top 4. That's what people are going to be pissed. More Big Ten teams are going to get in the playoff than SEC teams is my prediction, because I think the SEC is stronger top to bottom. And I think there feels like there's a lot of 9-3 teams coming out of the SEC this year. Like I think Missouri, LSU, Alabama, I think they could all go 9-3 and just miss the playoffs close.
Yeah.
And one more bold prediction for you. You alluded to it earlier, talking about Georgia, Alabama. It could be College game day. Another thing, and who knows, just people are going to be pissed about the college championship. It's such a subjective thing. People are going to be pissed about Nick Saban on game day at some point this season.
Yeah.
It's going to get real old. Like, he's employed by the university. Like, I don't understand why that's allowed. I don't feel like I've ever seen a member of the media be employed by one of the teams they're covering. And I feel like once Alabama games start happening and he's talking about Alabama, and he's watching practice of someone who's about to play Alabama, like it's just people are gonna be pissed about it. If they're not already, we're not that concerned about conflicts of interest, in Congress and things like that. But in sports, when things happen, people get pissed about it. So that's my last bold prediction for the 2024 season.
I love it. All right, Matt Green, week 1 preview coming up here later this week, and then recap on the weekends, but we're back to 2 a week. Our predictions are in, week 0 recap in the books, and week 1 here in just a couple days. And until then, yeah.
1-0 on the season, sir. Georgia Tech.
You go. Okay, whatever.
You're 0-1, so
right,
let's put it on the board.
All right, Matt Green.
2024 is going to be different.
I'll talk to you soon. Bye, Matt Green.
Yes, sir.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.